Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds to allow everyone to join, because I know sometimes there's a little bit of a time just to let people in, and then we'll get started.
That's good progress. I can actually see people joining this week.
Absolutely. That's great. I think I'm going to make a start now. First of all, I just want to say good afternoon or evening to everybody, and thank you for joining us. Firstly, I just want to start off by saying sorry really for the glitch that happened last week, and thank you to everyone here who's joined us this week. We can see the numbers going up, so hopefully you've not had any issues joining us, and thank you for joining us as we've obviously rescheduled the event this week. So as I said, let's just make a start. So this branch masterclass today is with our Nottingham, Leicester and Derby branch, and it will be on certifications, skills, and really taking a look at some of the various academic and professional qualifications that are out there. But I won't spoil too many of the surprises for you. So before we hand over to our host today, I'm just going to run you through some of our house rules that we have really for our webinars on Zoom. Just to let you know that you will be muted throughout the webinar today, but please do type any questions you have for our speakers using the Q&A box, which I think is at the bottom of your screens, and we'll be able to pick those up for you at the end of the talk. If you do have any technical problems today, hopefully we don't, but if there are, then please do email us at support@CIISec.org, and another member of our team will be able to pick that up for you and hopefully get you back in and everything. So now I'd just like to hand you over to our host today. So handing over to our branch chair, Colin Robbins, and Dawn.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad you could all make it after the false start last week. I do feel a bit of a fraud hosting this meeting, because in reality, Dawn has done most of the work setting things up for this, particularly getting the new links out and working with people in the CIISec office to tie things up. So thank you very much for your support, Dawn. This is the first Nottingham, Leicester, Derby branch this year from CIISec, and we plan to continue as last year with 4 regional events. Some of those will be in collaboration with the BCS branch, and who knows, maybe we can even get to do some face-to-face meetings by the end of the year. More details will come at the end of our next event, but very briefly, it will be an online event jointly with the BCS, looking at perhaps one of the biggest hacks of 2020, the SolarWinds attack, and really will be exploring what actually happened and how do it as an industry and network defenders should we be reacting. On to this evening, I'm very pleased to be able to welcome Professor Steve Fennell to the meeting. Steve is a director of CIISec and has been very active with CIISec in the Southwest branch. It's now our really good fortune that he's accepted the position of Professor of Cybersecurity at the University of Nottingham. And so when we heard he was moving to the region, we contacted him and asked if he'd like to present to a regional branch and to welcome him to the region, which he kindly accepted, and asked what he'd like to talk about. And so he said he'd like to talk about unicorns. And so, yeah, Steve is going to talk to us for about 40 minutes and then throw in hopefully a bit about cybersecurity en route. As it said at the start, please put any questions that you've got in the chat, and then we'll address those at the end. So over to you, Steve.
Okay, thanks very much, Colin. Let's see if I can do the technical bit and share my screen. There we go. So hopefully that's now working. I'm not sure I can take full credit for the choice of title. I think I said I was happy to talk on a number of subjects, and this was the one that was picked. I'm not sure I mentioned unicorns, but we've gone with that anyway. And so, yeah, this gives us our topic for this evening. And yes, thanks again, everybody who's persisted and come along for a second week. Hopefully the technology won't let us down this time. So certifications and skills, are we looking for unicorns? It is the theme. And it's really all around the issue of our skills shortage, as widely reported in the cyber and information security sphere. And our prospects, therefore, of, well, firstly, understanding the sort of thing that we're trying to get in terms of our recruits, our hires into the discipline, and also our prospects of actually finding people that meet our expectations and our requirements. And also a little bit about whether our requirements are realistic, and hence the title here around unicorns. So let's do a little bit of scene setting then. And this chart here presenting some information from Enterprise Strategy Group over recent years. Their most recent survey results from 2020 didn't pose this question in exactly the same way, but in prior surveys they were asking organizations to indicate areas where they had problematic shortages of staff and capability, and cybersecurity was consistently amongst, or if not the most significant area where there was a problematic shortage being indicated. As you can see from the later years, it was more than half of the respondents suggesting they had a problem in that area. So the first bit of evidence to show that, okay, finding people with relevant skills in cybersecurity is perhaps a challenge. Showing that this problem didn't go away in the year where Enterprise Strategy Group didn't have a survey that asked that exact question. Here's something from CIISec Squared's cybersecurity workforce study published last year. There's a series of these. So this is just drawing from the most recent version. So this is a global study rather than just UK, but finding that about 2/3 of organizations had reported some level of skills shortage in relation to cybersecurity. 42% of those, they characterized it as a slight shortage, and about a quarter said it was significant, a quarter or a fifth, depending on your interpretation of the numbers there. 56%, so more than half by my maths, considered that their organization was placed at moderate or extreme risk as a result of this. And so yeah, it's a significant issue in the case of the organizations that were experiencing a skills shortage. The positive news, I guess, compared to the previous version of the same study back in 2019, was that there's now about 1 million fewer shortage in terms of the practitioners we're looking for. But still, 3 million short is still a fair number to be lacking globally. So what are we actually asking for? Now, this is a set of examples from recent, if not still current, vacancies being advertised in the UK for cybersecurity practitioners. So this was from a sample I took, as you can see there, on the 27th of January. So in preparation for doing this talk last week, it was even more recent when it was planned to be shared. And what you can see here is a range of very attractive sounding job titles, some interesting looking salaries, and also a range of acronyms for certifications that the roles are suggesting are required. So as you can probably pick out just by scanning them, and if you're familiar with what some of these certifications are, you've got a range of different certifications being asked for the same sort of position. If we look particularly at the last one, where actually the salary range in itself is quite an interesting sort of spectrum, but looking at the things that they are looking for somebody to be certified in, we've got everything from CompTIA's, well, presumably Security Plus, CompTIA Plus is what they've called it, through to CISM and CISP and GDPR, which I thought was a regulation rather than a certification, and all manner of other acronyms in there. So what it suggests to me, at least, is any acronym might do in this particular case. They want a cybersecurity consultant, but they're not entirely sure what they want that person to show a proficiency in. And again, we can see it perhaps from some of the others. So again, picking another one at random, cybersecurity lead in brackets technical, that one roughly in the middle. We've got them asking for CISA or CEH, which again are two rather different certifications. So we'll come back to this theme later on, but I thought it was interesting just to throw this one up there to show the range of things that people tend to be asking for in relation to given roles. So certainly in terms of our search, and here's a picture of a unicorn, So organizations do need somebody to handle their cybersecurity needs. So there's some need for knowledge, skills, expertise, capability, however we characterize it, to help us on our way. Those that we therefore hire to provide support, they need to have understanding of the topic and they need to have some skills. What that understanding looks like, what the skills look like, we'll come on to. But it raises some consequent questions. So how do we, as employers, as people trying to recruit the talent, know what's actually relevant, and how do we know what we need? How do we recognize our needs in amongst the marketplace of the certifications and the various things that could get listed on somebody's resume, on their CV? And then where do we actually find the people who've got the skills that we have now matched to our requirements? So I'm not saying we can necessarily answer all of these questions, but these are relevant questions that our need for skills actually raises. Oops, did I miss one there? Yeah, so this raises, I guess, a question sort of straight off the bat. Well, what is cybersecurity anyway? And I'm not about to get into the debate about is cybersecurity the same as information security, because you can ask 100 different people and they'll give you 100 slightly varying answers probably. But what we do recognize that we're talking about is it's not just one thing. There's several topics that sit under the heading of cybersecurity, and perhaps what we interpret it to be depends on what we're using as our frame of reference. Certainly, if we look at all the certifications out there that claim to be cybersecurity certifications, they're certainly not all the same either. And I've termed it here a multi-faith community of practitioners, recognizing that it's this broad church of different underlying skills and capabilities. And this actually plays off the title of a paper that I'll throw towards you at the end as a reference for the underlying presentation. But if we do it at a very broad level, we've got a range of technically oriented subjects and we've got less technical, non-technical topics. So list of possible options are listed there, and we'll go a little bit more into that as we progress through the slides. What we often see in practice is perhaps a skew towards the technical perspective or perception that cybersecurity is entirely about technical capabilities. It's not true, but nonetheless, there's a significant part for technical skills to play. So it's not surprising that we see that aspect coming through quite prominently. Now, looking at a study from Ipsos Mori, which was published last year, this is their analysis of the UK cyber skills labour market. And what one of the many questions that the study asked was whether the respondents had confidence in different categories of cybersecurity skills. Now, what these tables are showing, grouping the different task areas by technical, governance and communication tasks, is the percentage that weren't confident that they had the associated skills within their organisation to do the things being asked for. So, looking at the technical tasks, so things like threat intelligence, security architecture, engineering, pen testing, okay, there was a proportion of people that weren't confident, proportion of respondents not confident, the biggest being in the area of pen testing, where almost a quarter weren't confident. But in the main, there's a large degree of confidence in those technical tasks. Looking at the governance tasks, it's a little bit more pronounced in terms of the lack of confidence. So carrying out a data protection impact assessment, more than a third aren't confident there. Rising through to carrying out a risk assessment, which arguably we might think is fundamental in some respects to deciding what we're going to then do to protect things, almost half are not confident they've got the skills to do that. And looking at communication, okay, in terms of giving password guidance, most people are confident that they can do that, but preparing training materials, running sessions on cybersecurity awareness, less confidence that they've got the ability to pass the message on. And so again, here we've got a diversity of potential skills that are required to support cybersecurity and significantly varying confidence in these respondents' ability to do that within their organizations. So if we aggregate that together, putting it into a little chart there, that shows the growing percentage of lack of confidence depending on the category of tasks being asked for. Looking at a different source of information, so this is some material published by the InfoSec Institute back in 2018, under the heading, their heading, not mine, the top 10 skills security professionals need to have. And so again, looking at the list, it's a range of different skill knowledge areas. So you've got skills in security analysis and pen testing topping the list, and it remains technical for a little while. And then you go down and you see things like customer services, communication, collaboration, curiosity and a passion for learning. Lost that a while ago. But things that are not necessarily technical skills, they're the more transferable, interpersonal, team-related human skills. Okay, so different characteristics that the professionals need to have to do their jobs. And again, sort of reiterating some elements of that, another CIISec study, this one from 2018, about hiring and retaining cybersecurity talent. The 5 most commonly used skills amongst the folks that responded to this were around cybersecurity strategy, cybersecurity management, user education, risk assessment, and security ops. Now, notably again there, it's a skew towards the things that seem perhaps less technical, but it was, as the survey itself, the report itself indicates, very likely skewed by the nature of the respondents themselves. So 2/3 of them being at middle management level or higher. So recognizing that technical skills might be more dominant at the lower levels of cyber roles, but the fact that as they progress, people still need a broad understanding and a broad skill set to actually progress in their careers. So, okay, let's not get the idea that I'm suggesting non-technical skills are more important here. Absolutely not. The whole point of this is that there's a spectrum of skills that we need to be able to support and recognize as being relevant to our needs. So the point is it's a wide discipline. We need to take that holistic view. But what you see it as being or how you might interpret it could vary depending on what you've used as your reference point. So what practitioners perceive cybersecurity to be about and what they think it involves could vary between different people depending on what they've regarded as their original source of truth, for want of a better term. So let's look at a number of security frameworks, not an exhaustive set of all those that are out there, but all of them that I'll show here as examples are credible, relevant sources that people are using in practical terms. And the reason that I'm flagging them up is to show the different way in which they essentially cut the cloth, or cut the cake, or whatever else you want to cut. So here's one that you may be aware of. So this is a relatively new development from here in the UK. It's the cybersecurity body of knowledge, which divides the topic area overall up into currently 19 knowledge areas. I won't read them all out for you. You can see them there on the slide. I think I've probably got them listed. I'm not sure what order I've listed them in, to be quite honest with you, because that's not the order they appear in the collated CIISec document either. So it's a list, not alphabetic, not in order of anything other than I fitted them on the slide that way by the look of it. But key point, CIISec cuts the cake into 19 pieces with these titles. Okay, so you can see a range of different topic areas. Picking something rather different, we've got the ISO 27002 Code of Practice for Information Security Controls. This breaks the topic area down into what it terms 14 clauses and then subdivides further. But if we look at the 14 top level areas, okay, it's a different 14 headings to the previous slide. And what I should say at this point, comparing just these two and then the others that follow, I'm not suggesting that any individual source has got it right or wrong. What I'm saying is they present things differently. And so their emphasis is in different areas. And they fundamentally also, the sources that I'll flag up have got different roles to play. So it's not that you would take, for example, CIISec and ISO 27002 and regard them as interchangeable in terms of how you would use them in practice. The point here is there's a topic space, broadly similar, which they've broken up rather differently. So a few more, and I've color-coded them here to try and give some sense of the proportion of topics within them that are predominantly technical, predominantly non-technical, or perhaps fairly mixed or balanced, and in some cases, not specifically cybersecurity related either. So we've got here, just going across the list and now testing my memory to see if I can remember what all the acronyms stand for. We've got ISC Squared's Common Body of Knowledge. We've got the CIISec skill, so ISC Squared's body of knowledge there, that underpins things like the CISP certification. We've got the CIISec skills framework. So it's the way of partitioning the skills within the cybersecurity landscape as defined by CIISec. We've got something that will sound similar when I say it, CIISec, which is from a joint task force from what was, when it was being created, it was the IEEE, the ACM, the AIS, and IFIP, 4 more acronyms for you, 4 professional bodies, international bodies, looking to formulate cybersecurity curricular guidelines for undergraduate programs. So this was an international joint effort by these professional bodies, and they published their findings in 2017 as a curricular guide to the area of cybersecurity. Then we've got CIBOC, as I'd already mentioned, and ISO 27002. We've got the NICE workforce framework, so the National Initiative on Cybersecurity Education, partitioning the subject space there, and the National Security Agency's Cybersecurity Centers of Academic Excellence. See, I knew I'd get one of the acronyms wrong. So that's the reference point that the NSA uses for setting up their academic centers of excellence in the US, framed around different parts of the subject space. Okay, ignoring the bit at the bottom of the slide, I dragged something off there that no longer applies, so ignore the asterisk. So you might be wondering, where did the colours come from? So just going back to the colours, seeing these proportions of technical and non-technical coverage, just using the 2 that I previously flagged, here's how I've color-coded these 2. So CIBOC here, if you look at the knowledge areas and look what's contained within the descriptions of them in the source documents, the majority of them have a more technical flavour to them, but there are clearly a few that are from the non-technical or less technical perspective, whereas ISO 27002 is rather at the other extreme, so to speak. Again, going back to the comparison here, 27002 is clearly the one with the most non-technical coverage. Okay, so again, it's not a question that one of these has got it right and the other one's got it wrong, or indeed any of the other ones. It's that they've all got it somewhat different. So all of them offer a point of reference for other things to be done with them. So in some cases, it's for mapping of academic courses, so like the CIISec curricular guidance. Some are related to professional certifications, some for training. And in some cases, that's specifically what they've been designed to do. So the CIISec guidelines are the curricular framework, the ISC Squared's Common Body of Knowledge. It's there as a reference point for their certifications. Others, they can have multiple applications. In fact, all of them could have multiple applications, but CIBOC, for example, can act as a reference point to map other frameworks to it. So you can see, perhaps in that broader landscape, where other ones fit in. So, as I've already said, sort of spoiling this slide, there isn't a right one. They're all different for valid reasons. So they can have 2 uses. You can, for example, use them to map a certification or an academic program to them to see what areas are covered within them, or a basis for comparing 2 different things to see how they compare against a common reference point. But again, and I suppose the 3rd bullet point from the first set there is the key one, they're all fit for purpose, but we need to be clear on what the intended purpose is and what we're trying to achieve with them. So going back to the needs of employers, and we'll return to some colourful charts in a minute. So looking at a couple of quotes from employers in, again, recent recruitment related studies. So ISACA's State of Cybersecurity back in 2019. Doesn't that seem a long time ago now, given 2020? So they said, currently the most prized hire in a cybersecurity team is a technically proficient individual who also understands business operations and how cyber fits in to the greater enterprise needs. Symantec, they're tackling cybersecurity overload in the same year. The really good people in the industry are far more than just technically skilled. Particularly at the higher ranks, you need that mix of technical and soft skills to enable implementation of things that actually work. So again, it's not in any sense dismissing the technical skills, it's showing that it needs to fit in alongside other attributes as well. So, all right, so how does this relate to qualifications? So this, again, sort of using the same sort of style of reference point of, is it covering things in a largely technical way, non-technical, or is it covering things that aren't cybersecurity specific? We took a look at 10 master's degrees here in the UK. Now, in a paper that I'll point you towards at the end of the session, we also did the same thing with 10 master's degrees in the US as well. So I did this work in conjunction with a US academic that I was collaborating with. But I'll present just the UK chart here. Now, the interesting, to me at least, characteristic of all of these courses that I'm about to show is they all had the same title. They're all called MSc Cybersecurity. And what we did was we looked at the publicly available information about the modules within these programs to see what they were focusing upon. We excluded their project modules because that's not part of the talk credits, and you'd obviously expect the candidates on the programs to be doing a cybersecurity related project, but it would then be their choice rather than the providers as to whether it had a technical or non-technical direction to it. So looking at just what the candidates were being taught as part of the program, so how cybersecurity is being presented to them. Now, what we've got on the next slide is, so the results of this, looking at 10 programs from UK universities. I'm not going to say which universities it was. Suffice to say there were 10 that all had something called MSc Cybersecurity. This is what they look like when you apply that sort of categorization to them. And you can see quite a mix here. So I suppose the one that stands out most prominently for me is course number 5 there, which is an MSc in cybersecurity, where only half of the modules are explicitly about cybersecurity topics. So the other modules are covering non-cybersecurity topic areas. So things like, let's say, operating systems, programming, networking. There might be some coverage of security issues embedded within it. In fact, you'd expect there to be, but they weren't presenting it as a cybersecurity module. It was a wider computing topic. And you can see that exists to different extents in other programs as well. And again, the balance of technical versus non-technical coverage tends to vary. Now, again, not saying that any of these programs are the right one, that anyone has hit on the right mix and covers it in a far better way than the others. The key thing is they're all called the same thing, but clearly graduates from these programs would come out with fairly different experiences in terms of what they've been taught, the assessments that they've done, and how cybersecurity has been presented to them based on this mapping here. So let's say the wider computing knowledge certainly isn't irrelevant because it can help to support cybersecurity practitioners understanding where cybersecurity fits in. But perhaps, particularly in program 5, maybe the coverage of non-cyber issues, particularly in a one-year degree called cybersecurity, perhaps seems a bit excessive. So ignore that bit there, the last bit, that again relates to a bit I trimmed off the earlier chart where I'd had something about cybersecurity job vacancies and how they map. So smack on the wrist for me for stripping a bit out of one slide and not stripping it out of here as well. But if you refer to the paper that I'll point you towards later, you can find that there. So again, what does this mean? Well, certainly it's one size doesn't fit all. It's quite reasonable that there will be different interpretations across 10 different programs. All universities aren't expected to teach everything the same way. We've got now the NCSC certified degrees program for different types of, well, master's and undergraduate degree in cybersecurity or for cybersecurity. So different variations depending on the type of program an institution offers. So those that I was looking at in the previous 10, they would have all been programs that ostensibly would be the ones you would submit for certification as a general master's in cybersecurity based on the way they were marketed. Some of them were NCSC certified degrees, some of them weren't, some of them were from Russell Group University, some of them weren't. So there's a whole mix within that sample. But even with an NCSC certified degree, that's giving you an assertion of an evidence of the quality of the provision in terms of the team teaching it, the credibility of assessment, the content of the program being relevant in the way it's now done in terms of being mappable to the CIISec. But even there, the degrees are not all based upon the same actual syllabus. The NCSC certification is saying what this degree is offering is being offered in a credible way. So, okay, academic degrees is one thing, but if we look at this particular table from ISC Squared's workforce study back in 2018, and I'm using older stats here because the most recent versions or the more recent versions of the study don't present the same information, but looking at the bottom of this table, actually from the perspective of employers, the academic degrees are the things that they're rating as least important. Doesn't mean that they're unimportant, it just means that the employers are using other things as their preferred or primary indicators. So perhaps unsurprisingly, the most commonly sought thing is the work experience bit. But further down the list there at number 3, we see cybersecurity certifications. So another way of representing our knowledge and skills. So the academic qualifications are one potential badge for this, for want of a better term. Certifications are another. But again, they're not all the same thing. And so this sort of rough and ready diagram tries to suggest how things might fit in differently. So it's not suggesting that because academic qualifications are at the top that they're in any way better than anything else. It's just levels of abstraction here. In terms of academic qualifications, you might expect broader topic coverage than at the bottom of the thing, they're vendor or technology specific certifications. And in terms of the types of skills and attributes that would emerge, again, there's a spectrum on offer. So this is a very general indicator of where different things might fit into the picture. But anyone who's looked at the certification market, and those that hadn't, you at least saw a glimpse of it from those recruitment extracts earlier on, you'll see that there's a wide range of certifications that people can hold and a wide range of providers that are offering them. And here, just as a sample of 5, are 5 well-known providers of certifications in both the cybersecurity space and the wider technology space in some cases, and a set of some of the certifications that they offer. Now, again, these are not all the same thing. They have different topic coverage. They have different prerequisites in some cases in terms of the experience you need to have in order to gain the certification. And they vary in terms of how and whether they conduct examinations at the end in order to award the certification. But this is by no means an exhaustive list of providers or their certs. And unfortunately, nor is this. This is just a sample of other, some of them are the same as the previous slide, but a range of security-related certifications that you might encounter in recruitment and other contexts. Now, all of them except for one are valid, genuine certification acronyms. Now, if we were in a room and we were all together and I could wave money at you, I would offer £10 for anybody who could actually say what all of these stand for. But luckily, we're at a distance, and so I can't make that bet and risk losing my money. But I would suggest that that's rather an unusual set of acronyms that few people would be able to easily rattle off what they all stand for and know their place within the overall ecosystem. And so perhaps the position that this leaves us as people trying to staff cybersecurity teams, employers trying to recruit the talent, is perhaps confused. Okay, so back to some potential evidence of that point. So here is a more fleshed out version of a particular ad, but this wasn't one from my recent trawl. This is one I had already in an earlier slide set, so you won't go out and find this one currently being advertised. But this was for an infrastructure security manager, so a range of skills and qualifications being asked for or being considered appropriate. There were other things in the advert as well. I just picked out the skills and qualifications. It will pay you £80,000. It's quite a respectable salary. What do they want? Well, they'd like CEH or CISP or CISM or GIAC or equivalent. So CEH, the Certified Ethical Hacker, CISP, the Certified Information System Security Professional, CISM, Certified Information Security Manager, GIAC, the Global Information Assurance Certification series, because there's a whole range, there's about 50 or so different GIAC certifications that you could go for, or equivalent. So 4 rather different things, or the equivalent to them, is what we'd actually like somebody to have as a potential candidate for this role. So I mean, obviously this could have not been particularly well informed by somebody from the existing cybersecurity function within the organization saying what they needed. It could be just a bit of somebody from HR grabbing acronyms from other adverts they see around. We don't know how they ended up with this, but certainly this doesn't give a very clear picture of specific certification that somebody would have and be appropriate for the role. Okay, that's me. Emphasizing the point. Also, if we look at the different certifications, there's a pronounced difference in the level of demand for different things that are out there. So this, again, going from Enterprise Strategy Group's earlier findings, we can see that CISP in this particular case is by far the certification that employers are saying is most important to them. Doesn't mean that it's the best one. Again, I'm not passing any judgment over the suitability, the appropriateness of anything, but certainly in terms of employer demand in this particular survey, CISP came out clearly ahead, and perhaps because it's a more general certification. So it's covering a number of bases, whereas something like CISA or CEH has a more targeted role to play, perhaps. And something like CompTIA's Security Plus is aiming at a lower level of practitioner. So for those that aren't aware, something like Security Plus and CH, in fact, doesn't require somebody taking the certification to have any verified years of practitioner experience, whereas CISA, CISM and CISP all require between 4 to 5 years of practitioner experience, as well as the ability to pass the associated assessment. And the assessment is different in the case of these as well. So where does this leave us in terms of supply and demand? And again, this from a different source. This is from the CIISec.org, I think it is, website in the US. So based on a sample of data I took at the same time as writing, again, paper I'll point out to you towards the end. So looking at a number of different certifications and the level of demand for them based upon job adverts that were requesting them versus the number of practitioners that were out there actually holding them. And so we can see that something like CISP, there's a high level of demand for it, but relatively less supply of practitioners holding it. Whereas something like Security Plus, perhaps because it's easier for entry-level practitioners to get it because they don't need the prior experience, there's a lot of people holding it, but less demand for it in the market, because what the market is often looking for is the experienced practitioner. So that perhaps accounts for some of CISP's popularity, because seeing somebody hold that, you know that they got some level of experience behind them. So in terms of how all of this relates, well, we've got certifications that perhaps denote skills that somebody holds. They in turn potentially enable somebody to take a role. The skills certainly enable somebody to take up a role. Roles require skills. Skills support the certifications. Roles potentially could require certifications if we understand the relationship correctly. But the thing is, being able to understand what things actually match our needs. So at the moment, we've got a fairly confused landscape overall, I think, and I'm not about to wave a magic wand and say, and here's the solution. But one thing that could be quite useful to us as we move forward, launching in April of this year, is the UK Cybersecurity Council. So there's been a formation project running on this since 2019, a number of partners contributing towards that, of which CIISec has been one of the contributors out of many. And as you can see, that this quote taken from the Formation Project website, which is hosted by the IET, one of the things that the Cybersecurity Council aims to realise is a mapping of knowledge and skills onto careers and qualifications, so to hopefully bring some clarity to elements of this landscape. So mapping routes into and through the profession, signposting the essential skills and I've put in bold the bits that I should be reading out, defining career pathways and establishing a professional qualification framework. So as those things mature and the council can champion them, that should hopefully enable us to get a clearer understanding of where some of these perfectly good things fit into the picture and help us to support our needs within the organizations and support the career development of our security practitioners more effectively. So, drawing us to a conclusion, hopefully we're clear that we need to recognize there is a breadth of skills, a breadth of knowledge as well, that's needed in order to support cybersecurity in practice. So obviously, naturally, what we want to do, easily said, harder to do, is to recruit people that have suitable certifications and qualifications that tell us they can fill those roles. But to do that, we need to be able to match our understanding of the certifications, qualifications to the roles that we're trying to recruit into. Certainly, if we take a siloed approach to cybersecurity, sort of only recognizing technical or only recognizing non-technical elements, then that's ultimately going to limit the protection we're going to achieve within the organization. So we need this landscape of skills and we need people working together effectively. Of course, even having said all that, actually finding the people, going back to that initial stuff about there being an underlying skill shortage, could still frustrate our ambitions, but having a clear understanding of what we're looking for could enable us to do it in a more targeted and informed way. So a few things that I've drawn attention to through the talk. Mentioned the Ipsos Mori UK labour market study from last year. So that's an address that you can get that from. Just to note, there is an updated version of that that's going to come out in the next month or so, I'd imagine. So I know work's been ongoing on the 2021 update of that. So this one's the one that's publicly available for now, but more is coming. And then the things that I referred to that I've done with Matt in the US. So a couple of papers, this one in computer fraud and security, addressing cybersecurity skills, and this one in a more academic-y conference, the World Conference on Information Security Education last year, which was meant to be, where was it meant to be? Maribor in Slovenia, but it ended up being in a remarkably similar context to this because it's done virtually. Everywhere looks the same these days. So other than that, folks, that's the end of the presentation bit. Contact details there should you wish to get hold of me outside of this. I'm quite happy to take questions.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. That's very, very interesting. Yeah, we do have a number of questions and just noticed bang on time as well. So excellent. Well done.
Professional up to this point.
Yeah, so a couple of the questions are just sort of asking about the general nature of the skills shortage. So the first is from Paul Stevens, asking, has offshoring of general IT support skills been a contributor towards the skills shortage, thinking that we might have a smaller pool of folks to learn the skills from? And related to that, we have a question from Andy Jones of, is the shortage related to the evolving complexity of systems and services, which on the positive side represent themselves to users as being easier to use, things thinking of like IIS, PAS, SAS, etc. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on those two as to the contributing factors.
So I mean, in terms of the offshoring, I guess if we're offshoring to the right place, that might be the location where we can find the skills, but equally it perhaps precludes the development or reduces the potential for skills development of fostering them within our own organization. So I mean, the unfortunate thing is that it is apparently a global skills shortage. So wherever we look, we might find there's a shortfall, but looking for the right types of skills and refining our understanding of what we need might at least enable us to aim for a better or a more achievable target. So just as a broad sort of statement there, and this shouldn't be taken as in any way dismissing CISP, but given that most organized or most recruitment seems to be looking for CISP as one of its targets, people ought to be asking, is that what we actually need? Or would a more specific certification in a more specialized area actually map our particular needs more effectively? If everybody's going out looking for CISP because everybody else is looking for it, then that creates even more of a pull on a potentially limited pool. In terms of the Swiss Army knife aspect, well, I suppose if I'm interpreting it correctly, again, that reflects the broadening of the discipline, and again goes back to the need to, okay, if there's quite a lot to know in terms of the role that we're looking to recruit, what particular bits do we need? Do we want a broad brush familiarity with a lot of things, or do we need something that's more focused? And all of these different certifications have arisen, and the diversity of things we can see out there have come about because of this broadening landscape, because there is a role to play for different things. But I say the challenge is to understand how that landscape fits together and to then relate that to our specific needs.
Thank you. Again, there's another two questions that sort of related. One is this effectively showing a lack of understanding by recruitment companies? And related to that is, what can we do to educate HR departments as to what's a reasonable certification to look for? For example, requesting candidates to have CIISc for a junior role.
Yeah, so I think that the answer to the first question is it potentially is. I mean, it's not necessarily going to be the case in all of the things, but I'm sure in some of the cases it's due to somebody saying, well, okay, we've got a role that is, pick a title, cybersecurity engineer. What are other people who are advertising for that role asking for? Let's copy the things they're asking for and sort of pass it on. And so it sort of snowballs in that way. So having a more informed approach in the HR department amongst the recruiters to ensure that what is being asked for is fit for purpose would be useful. But it still comes back to that issue of we need to understand what is fit for purpose in different contexts. And in some cases, if the employer themselves has not got the cybersecurity knowledge existing in-house, it's a complicated landscape for them to navigate. So that's where, for example, the cybersecurity councils work on a career pathway, which will then, one would imagine, map particular certifications to particular career paths at different levels. Something like that would be a very valuable reference to enable somebody to know what they ought to be looking for in what context.
Thank you. So to the next questions, sort of augmented with a bit of a question of my own as well. So companies are acknowledging that they're not confident in the governance issues side of things. However, we see a lot of the new entrants into the market and the new roles that are being created are being forced into training schemes that are very addressing the sort of technical side of security. And I think that came out a lot in the qualifications you showed. So there's new entrants coming in being looked at the technical aspects, but the shortage being on governance issues. And really, I add that to that my own observation that certainly, I've been in the industry a long time, and looking at my peers, we have largely come from a technical background, but now spend most of our time working on governance issues, leaving the technical role to the new entrants.
So I think you're right. I mean, again, it was observed during the thing with, I think it was the CIISec Squared survey, that with the one about the different skills that people were saying they use on a daily basis, and it was the more established practitioners drawing on the management and strategy related things, saying that the earlier stage practitioners were of the more technical persuasion. So that's sort of fine, provided that they haven't understood security to be a purely technical discipline. I think it makes sense that you would have people coming in who are more specialized in the technical aspects because they've not got that vision of the organization, the business context, to that level of maturity that you'd need for some of the other things straight away. I think perhaps where it disconnects a little bit is you also saw it in terms of the master's qualifications. For example, the content of those programs was skewed primarily to a technical persuasion. So again, part of this is, I think, what do the academics want to teach, what students like to learn about. So I certainly had the experience of on degree programs being the one that's trying to deliver things around security policy and risk assessment, etc., while colleagues are delivering sessions on pen testing and forensics. And the students, sort of their instinctive perception is that the forensics and the pen testing are the more exciting things to be doing. And you have a little bit of a battle to win to try and explain to them and don't necessarily succeed, that no, security policy is just as exciting, etc. But actually, when they graduate and they then communicate later on, they do genuinely come back reflecting that they can now see where some of this other stuff fits in. But I think that the way that the discipline has been presented and understood by many is it's all about these sort of technical hands-on things, which are, I think, more interesting for newer entrants to be doing. So it's not a problem that they do it. I think the key thing is that it's presented as part of that more holistic landscape. They will still very likely be going into the discipline, doing the more technical related activities, but not doing so in a sort of siloed mentality where they don't see that there's other bits going on as well.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think it's understanding that these technical things need to be part of that process environment, and that's where you start to learn that the value and the importance of the process side. Again, a sort of a career path type questions. One sort of saying, how would somebody from a law enforcement background facilitate a career change into cybersecurity given the plethora of certifications? And is there a recommended pathway? And the other sort of related to that, so why are there so many different overlapping certifications, and should there be an effort to minimize the pool of certifications so it becomes a lot clearer?
Well, picking up the last one first, I think there's a range of certifications, in large part because there's a market to be had, and it's, there are services that people can sell. I think there's quite a legitimate basis for those things to exist, providing different focus on different aspects, bringing different expertise to bear. So I don't think we would necessarily want there to be just a single qualification or a single syllabus for each given topic, because people will treat it in a different way and put emphasis on different aspects. In terms of career changing, I suppose it depends on what individuals have already got as their previous background and understanding in different parts of the technology space. So if it's somebody changing into the career who's already very technically aware and focused, that perhaps gives a different starting point to somebody who is coming at it without any sort of technical understanding at all, so the wider IT and computing aspect. So looking for an entry point that matches your background. So it might be, for example, that academic program, a master's or something like that, could provide a useful foundation for a number of areas. It could be that a more investigative focused certification in the digital investigation area could be relevant, provided, again, it matches up with somebody's general IT understanding as a starting point. So there's not as you can see from me sort of scrabbling around for it, not a clear single answer. It's really got to be mapped to what somebody's got as their background coming into it.
Thank you. Next question sort of relates back to the previous question. Sorry, excuse me. And just how long do you think it takes to build the technical skills versus the softer skills? And for example, do you take someone that's technically competent and build their soft skills, or do you do it vice versa?
Well, I think you could do it both ways, but again, it's going to come down to the individual. So, for example, acquiring the technical skills, some people come to it much more easily than others, and similarly with the soft skills, some people won't acquire those as easily. So they're quite happy to do the technical level things, but don't build up that wider business appreciation or the ability to do the interpersonal aspects. I think again with the technical stuff, and with any of it to some degree, you're never going to stop learning. There's always the potential to find out more. I think the technical skills in particular, the practitioner aspect, the actual experience of using it live in the field and doing something with it is going to make a lot of difference compared to what you might learn, let's say, in the classroom in a lab context. And so there's a limit to what's going to be achieved through the taught element of it without having that aspect of seeing it done live and seeing what it really means.
Yeah. Thank you. And so I'll make this the last question. So apologies to everyone that has raised questions that we haven't got a chance to go through. Yeah, yeah, there are just one or two other slides that I know the office are keen to run through just to summarize things. So yeah, so the last question is, do you have any insight into the balance of demand between the strategic and technical qualifications on the contingent versus the permanent workforces? So are strategic qualifications more in demand for permanent roles, for example?
I'll be honest, I don't have an immediate answer for that in terms of the quality, the nature of the workforce role being requested. I don't know if you were to go to, and this isn't a UK source, but if you have a look at the CIISec site in the US, or indeed delve into the details of the UK labour market study that we did with DCMS, there might be some more specifics in there, but I can't bring it immediately to mind. So rather than try and make something, I'll just simply say I don't know on that particular score without checking.
Well, thank you. So thank you to everyone that has asked questions, and sorry we don't have time to get to them all. I'd like to take this opportunity to yes, have a really big thank you to Steve for a very thought-provoking talk, and I'm sure it's a debate that will be going on for many months, if not years, and certainly look forward to seeing what the UK Council, the Security Council, come out with in April. So yeah, so I'm sure we would normally do the usual round of applause at this stage, but it'll be a bit silent, unfortunately, with everyone's microphones muted.
Sounds like the normal round of applause I get anyway. So thank you very much.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Colin, for rounding up there. And thank you, Steve. It's such a brilliant presentation. And it's a shame that we had so many questions that we'd love to obviously get back to you on. I'm just wondering whether there might be an opportunity for us to pass those on to you, Steve, afterwards, obviously, providing you'd be happy for us to pass those on to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely, and we can maybe distribute those afterwards with the link to the recording and everything. So just to hand off, just before you all leave, I just wanted to make you aware of some of the other content we have going on at the moment and coming up as well. So as you'll probably see, there's a bit of an ongoing theme over the next month or so on supply management. We've just recently launched our ABC guide on supply management, and not long ago we ran a masterclass as well on supply management with CRMG, one of our corporate members. As you can see, we have another webinar coming up shortly on the 3rd of March, following on from that with Crossword Cybersecurity. And as you can see, a whole host of other events there around a similar nature, and some various different ones as well, all of which you can register for on the CIISec website, and they also listed on our LinkedIn as well, where you can find more information on those. So just following on from that, I did also want to just mention to you some offers that we have going on at the moment. So following on from what I was just talking about with the masterclasses, one of our corporate members, Crossword Cybersecurity, are kindly offering free access to their supply management platform, which is called Risicon Assurance Member Offer here. If you just go to our CIISec website, there's a lot more information on there that will tell you obviously a lot more about it. And as I said, they are doing a masterclass with us on the 3rd of March, where they'll be going into a lot more detail about that. And yeah, so please don't miss on that. Please go and register on the website. Another thing I just wanted to mention to you before we go as well, following on from the success of our last masterclass with CRMG, they're also kindly offering something quite special to us as well. It is a limited offer, and as I said, there isn't much on the website about this at the moment, but there will be very shortly, so keep your eyes peeled for this as well. As you can see, there's a little bit more information on it there, but there will be a lot more to come on that one as well. So I think that's just a really quick way of rounding everything up. I just obviously want to say a huge thank you to Steve again for your presentation. It was brilliant, and and a big thank you to Colin and Dawn as well for putting on this masterclass. It's such an important area, and I hope that it was really valuable to the audience. And on that note, we'll obviously leave you to have a lovely evening, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.